Hey everybody, welcome to the Clouse and Cloyd show here on YouTube.com. He's Jason Cloyd, I'm Jason Clouse. We thank you so much for taking time out of your day to watch our show here on YouTube. It's under the Clouse to the Heart umbrella. Jay, man, we're in another week here. I've gotten a little bit of feedback from our debut show. What was your feeling as you look back on week one here?
Looking back or looking forward?
Looking back first.
Yeah.
When you went back and watched episode one,
yeah.
I mean, you and I talked a little bit before we hit the record button. You know, some changes that we're going to make. But overall, what was your feeling as you watched week one?
Good, real good. We got good synergy. So, you know, as far as topics go, you know, obviously we can play it close to the chest, or we can, you know, expand a little bit. But yeah, I think as far as you and I go, we got definitely good chemistry, good synergy, and yeah, felt good.
Well, that's 30 years of friendship. That's what we'll do that for you.
30 years in the making. And hey, I got to say, I'm really honored and privileged that I got to stay on your Facebook list. Yeah, I made the cut.
You did make the cut.
And yes, absolutely.
Unfortunately, for 100 and some people, they did not make the cut, unfortunately. But listen, I mean, we'll talk about that at the end, at the third segment of the show, you know, where we throw our 2 cents in, something like that. We'll talk about that, you know, later on in the program. Let's start off today, though, this week with something that, admittedly, I don't have to deal with, but you are. And it's something that affects a great percentage of the families, specifically in our country. And that is the dynamic of blended families, right?
Yeah.
Now, you and I are going to have two totally different points of view on this, because my experience with this, as you and I had talked about a little bit before we hit the record button, is I'm an outsider looking in. However, it still has a direct effect on my family and members of my family. And it has for quite some time.
Sure.
But on the, you know, and things have not always been favorable. And I'm sure you know a lot of people who are in this situation who fit that dynamic, that, you know, there's a blended situation going on, whether it be, you know, post, breakup or divorce or things of this nature. But there are children involved now, innocent children involved. And that's kind of what I want to tackle, just, you know, two different points of view on this. You cool with this?
Yes.
Okay. So here's my thing. Under no certain, we'll start like this. Under no circumstances, in my opinion, should a child or children be used as pawns in an ongoing rivalry between the parents. What I mean by that is, you know, the mom and dad, you know, they got together, they had whatever kind of relationship that they had. A child became part of the process here, or children. Things don't work out. Mom and dad split, and now you start worrying about or thinking about what happens next. And especially for children, you know, a lot of times they are traumatized by this, you know, and, you know, again, I do not have personal experience in that aspect of it, and I'm fortunate for that, because I don't know if I have the kind of patience and mentality to deal with situations that turn volatile or ignorant when my child is at play here.
Right.
So, for you recently just got remarried. You have a son with your first wife, Trisha. You're now married to Dana. She's got kids from her her previous relationship. You guys are still relatively new in this. You just got married back in February.
Yeah.
How are you adjusting to this new role? Because you are now not just dad to your son, you're now a stepdad to your wife's children.
Well, I just put away the handbook, the Step Parent for Dummies book. I just put that away. So yeah, there's honestly, truthfully, joking aside, there's no handbook. And if there was a handbook, we still wouldn't have it figured out.
Right.
As you know, I grew up in a blended family.
Yes.
That's a lot of the reason why you and I met was because I moved from Emily City to Lapeer.
Mm-hmm.
So, so going at that stage to now, they're definitely two different spectrums. And at that time, I welcomed the blended family because, you know, my brother had went away to college. I couldn't wait to have brothers. Okay. Right. So I thought it was actually a real cool experience. And I think as in a household, you start to develop different, you know, relationships with people, even under the same roof. And the older you get, you start to kind of fall apart. And, you know, and a lot of that has happened. So now we kind of fast forward to the blended family that I'm in now. Yeah, it's definitely new. I got 3 great stepsons. And, man, I tell you what, I really wouldn't change it for anything. Sure, there's moments that you can't wait for grandma to show up or, and quarantine to be over, but that's the nature of the beast when it comes to, being under one roof for so long. But as far as being a blended family, it can either be part of a title or it can either be part of a verb. Okay. Kind of like the word love, what is love? Love is a verb. Being a stepdad isn't just a title. It's, man, there's a lot of action and there's a lot of momentum behind it.
Right.
And the momentum that I try to carry is by, being, an example, a witness, and a leader to 3 young boys. And then, of course, to my own. So, man, I tell you what, if there's a handbook, I'll take it. But, other than that, it's a great ride.
So you, in your circumstance, you're pretty much learning as you go.
Yeah. I mean, I tell you what, if I had a stage right now, I probably would have training wheels.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you this, because when we started talking about this, that we were going to do this topic, I didn't even take into consideration that you grew up in a blended family.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I didn't, why that just never occurred. I like, as you were saying it, I'm thinking to myself, duh, of course he did,
Of course, yeah.
So,
we would have never met.
Right. So here's my question along that, because I know of, I have friends who are in blended family situations and things of this nature. And, when the new dynamic of, the dad and stepmom or mom and stepdad, whatever the case may be, when a lot of times, not across the board, but a lot of times when an argument ensues between the two parental, factors in the household, the children often become not necessarily the target, but they are the leverage tool. You know what I'm trying to say here?
Yeah.
Like they're trying to, justify their stance in the argument by using the kid as an example. Or, the one parent will seemingly put more focus and emphasis on their own child versus sharing that kind of of attention or whatever the case may be across the board to all of the kids, whether you had a hand in them being born or if they came into the family with your significant other. Growing up, did you experience that at all? I mean, like, for example, did your mom use you as advantage in an argument that she may have had with your stepdad, or
Oh, no.
vice versa?
No, I don't ever recall.
Okay.
No, if there was ever any disagreements, I mean, it was, nothing that we really saw out in the open. Usually probably behind closed doors.
Sure. Yeah, because I can't imagine your mom being mad. I don't think.
Yeah, it's a good thing you're saying that because she'll be watching this. So she watched the last one. I think
yes, she did. And she commented on it. And I was like, well, that's cool. I think your sister Tammy did too.
Yeah. Okay.
So let me just take a quick second and say hi to Ma and Tammy. So awesome.
Awesome.
It's a family affair.
Family. Yeah.
So. I think it's so important now especially with everything going on in the world and how we have been forced to see an altered lifestyle versus the one that we enjoyed and more often than not took advantage of before stay-at-home orders were put in place. A pandemic took its grip around the world, literally. I feel like the family dynamic is something that is overlooked a lot of times, and I feel, and especially I would imagine that this is certainly challenging for blended families because you have so many different dynamics of personality and how people are, how people react to things. Because when you're in a traditional, you have a mom, your dad, and their children, your standard family, and I use that in quotation marks, you grow up with these people. From day one, you know how they are, how they respond. You don't necessarily have that when you bring siblings into this thing. And I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, the relationship between step siblings oftentimes may be just as important, if not more important, than, say, your relationship with your stepsons or your wife's relationship with your son. Would you say that that's accurate?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's so many layers to this, and the one thing, and I know you do not fall under this umbrella because I know you as a person. I know how you are. But, man, I've seen and heard horror stories when it comes to broken families, blended families, this type of thing, to the point to where if a parent has, the majority of the custody of the kid, they will actually use the kid kind of like hold it over the head of their former partner.
Right.
And I don't think that that's necessarily, I can't wrap my brain around the mentality that it would take to use a innocent child. But, they never asked to be a part of a broken relationship. And they certainly, I would imagine, don't want to be used as that pawn in this ongoing war between mom and dad if things did not end amicably. Have you heard any of the stories like this? Because it's downright heartbreaking.
Yeah, really. I've got my own demons in the closet. When I went through this 6 years ago, gosh, I tell you what, it's almost like you don't necessarily use a kid as a hostage, but you try to hold as much power and leverage as you can.
That's a
And
good way to put it. See, I was sitting there I was trying to figure out the right way to describe
yeah,
a scenario, and you really nailed it here.
and it's hard to describe it when you're not, and when you haven't gone through it. And I actually have stepped out on a ledge, and I have gone through that, that process where I feel like if I'm going to, try to have some kind of control, that I definitely am going to do whatever it takes for control. Now, what did that really mean by saying that? It wasn't anything bad, but it's just like it's almost like you try to beat, your spouse at the time. It's almost like you try to beat them into submission. Okay. So is a child really leverage? Yeah, possibly. You know what though? But the thing is that I could probably talk to a lot of guys that are even going through this right now and try to give them as much advice as possible. But what makes sense though is down the road. Right now nothing makes sense.
Right.
6 years ago, nothing made sense. Guess what? 6 years later, everything makes sense. Okay. Now, as far as like what you mentioned with blended families and, the step kids, being together in one house, a lot of those relationships develop, definitely they develop within 10 years, 20 years. They don't develop overnight.
Right.
Sometimes to have a great relationship with somebody, and I'm guilty of this. I've probably beat my head against the wall just a few months ago going, man, what do I got to do to get through to anybody, And the thing is that it's something that just needs to mature. When something's growing, you pick it, you pick it when it's mature. And I think I'm guilty of trying to pick it, before it's matured.
Okay.
And relationships might take 5 years, they might take 10 years, they might take 5 months, they might take 30 years. I don't know.
Right.
Like we talked about earlier, I've been part of, my mom and her husband, just an awesome, great guy. I've been, part of that family now for what? Gosh, since they got married in '87. It was 2 years before you and I met.
Right.
And I ain't gonna lie, there's relationships even at the time growing up were great. I can remember going to wrestling events at the old IMA Sports Arena with my stepbrothers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unfortunately, you don't do that stuff now. You just don't.
Right.
Things just over time, just unfortunately, people just fall apart. Like we mentioned on last week, we talked about, I referred to Facebook as being like a, almost like the old TiVo, the programs, you can just, pop right through it. And I think that's what people rely on, even in families, they rely on those, those DVRs.
Right.
So, but yeah, so I know I've kind of flipped around a little bit there, Flop, but yeah, so there's definitely, like I said, there's not a handbook that comes with any of this. I mean, I may have 30 some years experience of being with a blended family, but man, I tell you what, it doesn't make me an expert though. I'm still.
And I would imagine it's a different dynamic, a different mindset, a different approach when you grow up as part of a blended family to where you are now, where you are one of the parentals of a blended family. I mean, is there a different? I would imagine that there would have to be, right?
Yeah. I tell you what, when you're, when you are, when you're head of the household, yeah, you got a lot of eyes looking at you, from from my bride to 4 kids,
Right.
they're looking at me for answers, and whether if they're just something simple or something difficult. I mean, it's tough. It's definitely tough, but I tell you what, like I said, I wouldn't change it though.
As you were talking, I was sitting here thinking about personal experiences in dealing with this topic here. And the one period of my life I try to erase. It's a very short period of time in my life to where I I was briefly part of a blended family in terms of um, literally, I guess. My parents had split up. My dad
Okay.
had married somebody else who had her own kids. And look, I'm just going to shoot straight with you. It was the absolute worst period of my life, around some of the most toxic and obnoxious people I've ever had the misfortune of running into. Just real pieces of garbage. And I know a lot of that. I'm sure once you peel the layers of the onion, they may have been tolerable, but well, no, not in my situation, because they were just horrible people. But um, I know a lot of that is because I would not let myself look at it objectively. Make sense?
Hmm.
Because I was so pissed about everything that had happened up until that point. I had zero interest whatsoever in trying to maintain a decent
Yeah.
relationship with these people. Um, Now, fast forward, several years, subsequently that didn't work out. My parents reunited and they lived happily ever after up until the end there. Um, but I think about my brother, and he just got married. He had just gotten married
Yep.
in December. He has a child from a previous relationship, as does his wife. And the one thing that Jeff kept talking about was how well his son got along with Melissa's son. And they became fast friends. And
Yeah.
I've got to believe that that is a result of how things were presented to them by Jeff and Melissa. Because I mean, ultimately, you're not going to fool the kids very long. They have senses. They observe what happens in the house. They have their own feelings, their own concerns, and things of this nature, and they know whether or not they're happy or not.
Hmm.
Now, in Jeff and Melissa's case, they really did a fantastic job of blending their two sides into one. And I'm telling you, every time you were around them, you could just feel that love, that unity between everybody involved. And I wish more parents would stop for a second and quit worrying about how everything in the whole world is wrong, and it's they're the victim and this and that and the other thing, and my ex is a piece of garbage because she said this, did that, blah blah blah. Okay, look, that's water under the bridge.
Hmm.
You've now reached a point to where there's no coming back from that. Apparently, you guys have gone your separate ways. Your focus should no longer be on how you were wrong. Rather, in my opinion, your focus should be how can we help our kids navigate through very choppy waters. Is that accurate,
Yeah.
or am I totally off the cuff here?
Yeah. No, I mean, kids, you're right. Kids are resilient, kids are smart, and they're going to catch on to a lot of negativity. They're going to look at a lot of positives too. Me and Dana always talk about, we need to show the kids here what a marriage looks like. Okay. So there's your positive energy right there. And, you know, as long as her and I are doing good, then whatever's going on in the household, that will take care of itself. Okay. So when you're telling me about, Jeff and Melissa, it's telling me that they had a very good relationship for their kids to be getting along that well.
Right.
Obviously, Jeff was a good role model as far as, being a father. Okay. Melissa's a good role model, for Noah.
Yes.
Noah. Okay. For Noah, so, I mean, if your kids really hate their parents, I mean, why do you want to get along with anybody? We've all seen the movie Step Brothers. I mean, they just, they go into that movie just, first button heads. But if they're looking to mom, they're looking to dad, and they see, how they are as a person, they're going to treat their, their next to kin there. They're going to treat them with a lot of respect.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's not to say that an argument or two hasn't erupted, between the
That's
brothers.
That's okay. There's no handbook. There's no handbook for that either.
Right.
And that's more than fine. Let the disagreements happen and let the sleeves get rolled up, and there's going to be some bloody noses here and there. But you know what? It's going to happen.
Right. You made a very interesting point on, and it's one of those things that's common sense, but as well as I do, not everybody applies common sense.
No.
But the children, they learn by observing what their parents are doing, or the parental units.
Yep.
As you were talking about that, I was thinking of the fact that Melissa at this point, having lost Jeff and what have you, has gone through great lengths to make sure that Jeff's son Cameron and her son Noah are still very much, or as much, involved in each other's lives as they possibly can.
Yep.
When you got stay-at-home orders and schedules and things of this nature, things can be challenging, and especially when you are in the wake of a tragic moment. But I'll tell you, she has really stepped up, for the lack of better terms, and made just, not all the effort, but has made a great deal of effort to make sure that the boys are still in each other's lives as much as possible, right? So, but to wrap this up, to wrap this segment up, I guess my point is man, if you are the parents of a blended family, it's on you, like you said, Jay, to really lay the groundwork for what a marriage is, or what a successful blended family looks like, and operates. Now, it's not going to be smooth sailing across the board, and that goes with any kind of family dynamic. Do you have anything that you want to add to kind of put a bow on all this?
Yeah, I probably do. I can't really think of anything right off the top of my head, to be honest with you, but like you said, it's a lot of it's a lot of hard work, but at the same token, it can actually come pretty natural as long as there's good synergy, and I've seen, growing up, I've seen, different, a lot of different atmospheres, from the childhood. And then now I see the kids here. I mean, it's just, the dynamics have changed.
Right.
It's a night and day difference from, what we had when we were growing up to, now these days. And, but the one thing though, that if the kids can have something in common, and I tell you what, it makes a big difference.
Very well said. Segment 2. It's something that we're going to call our top 5.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen from here on out is we will have a top 5 goofball. Um, we will decide on a topic. He'll give his top 5. I'll give mine, and see where we meet in the middle. To kind of try to, in a way to introduce this topic, we didn't want anything really in depth, but something that he and I have a lot of knowledge and experience in, and something that we both know and love and appreciate. So for our first top 5 segment, Jason, we are going to do our top 5 WWE or WWF World Heavyweight Champions.
Ooh.
This?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I like that
one. We can go 5-1 or 1-5. Which would you prefer?
Oh, let's go from 5 to 1.
All right.
So, yep, to least to best.
All right. Well,
So we're not talking. Well, I guess a lot of the superstars that are on my top 5 have been champions. So I guess I didn't know if we were talking like just
top 5 WWE champions.
Champion.
The World Heavyweight
Wow.
Champion.
Okay, sure.
And I mean, if one of the Universal Champions is on there, that's a world title.
Okay, then
in
so
my
be
opinion.
it. Okay.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah.
So for you, if I was to say, who is in your top 5 of WWF, WWE World Champions, who comes to mind?
Bret Hart.
Is he your number 5?
Let me see here. Hold on. I'm trying to get everybody down. I mean, because I do have my horsemen, obviously.
Sure.
Let's see here. There's that. So actually, okay. All right. Now, okay. He's actually probably number 6.
Bret Hart?
Yeah. So, okay. So let's go right to 5.
Okay.
So you want to do my list and then your list, or are we just going to do 5, 5, 4, 4? We want to do that.
However you prefer.
Okay. So my 5th would be The Rock.
The Rock.
Yes. Yes, he would be my 5th.
Okay. My 5th is going to be Bruno Sammartino. And
Bruno?
Oh, yeah.
Really? Bruno?
Listen,
okay.
Bruno Sammartino in his day. Now, he was the 2nd ever WWF champion. He defeated Buddy Rogers in a matter of seconds. The guy was in the 60s and the 70s. Bruno Sammartino was on a level unto himself.
He held the title for what, 6 years, something like that? At
7 years between 2 reigns,
Yep.
something like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was a pop culture icon, and especially in the Pittsburgh area in Pennsylvania. Obviously in New York, because they ran the Northeast. That was Vince McMahon Sr.'s territory. But yeah, man, I got Bruno for my number 5, just based on the amount of impact that he had on the sport during his time as champion.
Wow. Okay. So, very good.
So yeah, you got The Rock.
You went back a little bit. So yeah.
I did.
Yeah, and that's good. It's funny is that, if you talk to guys that are, 20 years older than us, 30 years older than us, they always say, well, I tell you what, Bobo Brazil or what, I mean, they talk about all these guys that it's just like, all right, well, I wasn't even asking about that, but, all right, so.
Well, these lists are very subjective.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, there's a 1,000 different pieces of criteria.
Yep.
But, when I guess it's like word association, you say top 5 champions, and these are the 5, the top 5 names that come to mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And I chose The Rock as number 5 just because, I guess a lot of it is because I think the 4 in front of him are just that much better. But You know, even though The Rock has beaten pretty much everybody else on the list,
Right.
you know, I don't know. Do you go on popularity? Do you go on performance? Do you go on, you know, who put us on the map? You know, yada yada yada. There's just a lot of things, but yeah, like you said, there's a lot of you can have a lot of you know, different opinions on this matter. But yeah, so he's 5.
Okay. Number 4, I went with Bret the Hitman Hart.
You did. Okay.
Bret Hart, obviously one of the greatest wrestlers to ever lace up a pair of boots. I mean, the guy was technically sound. He was the guy that was trying to usher in the new era post, you know, the Hulkamania boom. And, you know, he was really the first small guy to be given an opportunity to carry the flag for the World Wrestling Federation. And for all intents and purposes, you look across the board at his 5 reigns as champion. You know, a couple of them kind of slipped between the cracks. Like, oh yeah, I forgot that happened, especially around the '97 era. But Bret Hart, you know, for a while there was the guy. And he was somebody that really took that position to heart for, you know, no pun intended, but Bret Hart, man, you know, you roll the dice on him, and the guy more often than not came up as a winner.
Yeah, absolutely. They had to run with somebody, especially after Hogan left.
Right.
My 4 is Stone Cold.
Okay.
Well.
Interesting. Number 3, I went with Brock Lesnar.
Okay.
Brock Lesnar, especially once he came back to wrestling following, you know, his stint with the Minnesota Vikings football team, and then more famously, he had his run in UFC, dominated UFC for a while. Brock Lesnar brought a feeling of legitimacy to WWE in a time where it really needed it, because they started to fall back in the more kind of campy, cartoony storylines. Then you got Brock Lesnar coming in here and just, I mean, kicking everybody's ass from Cena. He defeated The Undertaker at WrestleMania. Granted, he wasn't the champion at the time, but you had nowhere to go but to put the title on him once that happens. So Brock Lesnar is my number 3.
Is your number 3? Okay. Yep. I went with The Undertaker for number 3.
Okay. I can appreciate that.
Yes, you can. Yes, you will.
My number 2 is no, go ahead.
Number 2, I went with Ric Flair.
So let me ask you this.
Yep.
Are you basing that solely on his WWF title runs, or do you incorporate his WCW?
No, that was just solely based on the WCW era, you know, before he came to WWF.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, no,
because you got to be fair to Flair, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to be fair to Flair. So, and I think him losing to Mr. Perfect was an absolute joke. For one thing, I did not like that. I didn't like it at all.
All these years later, man, you know, there's a couple of snapshots of you and I watching wrestling together that stand out to me to this day. And I remember you being very upset about Perfect beating Flair and the loser leaves town, man. So I remember that. My number 2 is Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Stone Cold.
I mean, what can you say about the guy that hasn't already been said? He really put wrestling back on the map, especially in a mainstream way, bigger, the biggest box office draw in wrestling history. His merchandise is off the charts. He really made the WWF a household name again for good reasons,
Yes.
and not necessarily bad ones.
Yep. Oh, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, he's the one. I think there's two people that put wrestling on the map, and he was one of them.
Right.
Yeah, he was definitely one of them, and the other one was Hulk, who's my number one.
He's my number one too.
Yeah, he's my number one.
Hello, Kitty.
Yeah, like I said, Figs is like part of the family. He just gets up on this chair here, and if there's an unoccupied seat, he will definitely take it.
That's fantastic. Yeah, Hogan. I mean, wrestling would not be where, in my opinion,
Yep.
wrestling would not be where it is right now. There would be no WWE network. There wouldn't be anything that we as fans enjoy. I mean, for a I feel like I'm arguing with this cat, like he's judging me.
Yeah, it's like that one meme, the kitty, where everyone's yelling at the kitty.
Yeah, so Hogan, my number one. I mean, the real life superhero when we were kids.
Yeah,
and
did he have all the wrestling skills? Probably not. But as far as popularity, as far as putting on the map, as far as larger than life, it's hard to beat.
They had a damn cartoon.
He had a cartoon.
I mean, what more do you really have to say? The man had his own Saturday morning cartoon. I mean, the WWF did as a whole, but I mean, it wasn't the Junkyard Dogs rock and wrestling or anything.
No.
It wasn't, on the Adventures of Andre the Giant. It was Hulk Hogan, and for a long time, it was Hulk Hogan. To this day, a lot of people, you talk about pro wrestling, he's still the name that they come up with.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. He's, he was the man. He's the man.
All right. Well, that's a pretty impressive list, man. I mean, you got Hogan, Flair, Undertaker, Austin, and The Rock. I've got Hogan, Austin, Lesnar, Bret Hart, and Bruno Sammartino. So, I mean, still, man, and this is a Hall of Fame class like no other.
Yeah, what's funny is I get asked about that, gosh, every so often, and people always ask, it's like, why is the Ultimate Warrior not on your list? You were like such a big fan of his. It's like, I don't know. Honestly, he really wasn't that good. I think a lot of his personal demons is what, kind of made him go away so quick. But yeah, I mean, still, he's the first one to beat Hogan fair and square.
Right.
He's the first one to beat Andre the Giant in less than 30 seconds. He took the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time down in less than 30 seconds.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of things going for him, but as far as, I don't even know if I'd put him on top 10. To be honest.
No, I certainly wouldn't.
Yeah.
I certainly wouldn't. He's just, I mean, for a character, for a gimmick, he served his purpose.
Yep.
I can understand, especially now that we're older and we look back on this, things that we didn't pick up on when we were kids because we were fans,
Right.
we were the demographic. So, yeah, I mean, I have a couple of buddies that I work with, and the Ultimate Warrior is the end all be all. And look, I appreciated the Ultimate Warrior for what he was, but to go down as one of the all-time greatest professional wrestlers of all time, he's not there for me.
Oh, not at all. No. I mean, but as far as to round out top 10, like I said, I had Hart at 6. Oh, I'd probably put, Shawn Michaels in there. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to dig a little bit, I guess. Triple H has got to be up there somewhere.
Sure. Yeah. And I know I'm going to get a lot of heat from especially members of the MWO roster for not putting Shawn Michaels on my list. A lot of people, that's their guy.
Yeah.
And I can certainly understand why. They don't call him Mr. WrestleMania for no reason, and I
Right.
have
right.
no exception for him having that moniker because the guy delivers.
Yeah.
He's just not my cup of tea, man. I've never been, for the bubblegum chewing white meat baby faces that are programmed and subsequently kind of shoved down our throats. I like the more charismatic guys. I like the guys that are more rough and tough. Like Bray Wyatt right now is my go-to guy.
Yeah.
Whether he's Bray Wyatt or the Fiend, I didn't like the Rockers, but I love the Legion of Doom, or Demolition, but now that I look back, I find myself cheering more for the heels now than I do the baby faces.
That's what people want. That's what people want. They just don't want the good guy anymore. They just don't. People have it. And I think the whole Stone Cold thing kind of took that off.
Yeah.
So when you got the John Cenas and the Roman Reigns of the world, I think the reason why they get booed so much is because they're that, they're that goody two-shoe guy. And people don't want that. They want that Bray Wyatt. They want that Elias, which I think they're screwing up with Elias's character.
Totally.
I think they could have ran off with him and made him an absolute phenom.
Yep.
But they decided to flush that.
Right.
They're doing.
But Otis is Mr. Money in the Bank.
I saw that. Yeah. I saw that. No comment. But I see what they're doing with what's his name, Drew McIntyre. The guy didn't have that good of a career a handful of years ago. They bring him, and they work with them, and I see what they're doing there, and that seems like that works. I just wish they would have done something better with Elias. There's still hope, but
right.
He has a great following, and I think they could have really turned him into something pretty good.
Right. Totally agree. Well, Jay, we got about 10 minutes or so, depending on how much editing that we can do, and in condensed time. For the last segment here, it's kind of my 2 cents.
Yes.
If there's anything that you want to get off your chest, an observation, something you saw, something you liked, something you didn't like, just your own kind of personal narrative on the specific thing. This is where in the show you would talk about it. If you need a couple of minutes, I have one that I've mentioned it a few times, and it's specifically on my audio podcast through Spotify. Cheap plug. Man, I talked about it last week, and now it's really starting to rear its ugly head, and that's these people who are going off on these tangents on social media about topics that they have no idea what they're talking about. Personally, for me, a lot of what I see that gets me fired up more than anything is these people that have an opinion on what goes on in my place of employment, which coincidentally your wife is also employed at. And, and I just, dude, nothing gets me nothing gets me. I can't tell now because you're being a goofball, but nothing gets me fired up than people who think they know what the shit they're talking about when it deals with what goes on inside those walls, and they have no idea. We're starting to go back to work this week. First shift started this week, second shift follows, and then third shift. Look, there is not going to be a perfect solution to coming out of this pandemic. There's not going to be a perfect, plan in place because everybody has a different opinion on what's real, what's not real. My problem is when these people who post these things on social media, and it's usually on the thread through a major news market, ABC 12, NBC 25, that type of thing. They'll, the media feels like what we do in the big three, not our plant specifically, but across the board. They feel like it's everybody's business on what goes on, what happens, who's doing what. When in reality, I don't give a rat's ass what happens at the McDonald's on Dort Highway on whether or not this dude is having an affair with his girlfriend or not. That does not make front page news.
Why do I know what you're talking about?
But everybody has to know what's going on with the big three. Everybody has to know when our profit sharing comes, and they have to know what the plan is in place as we emerge from this lockdown and things of this nature. So my point is, unless you are directly involved in any kind of situation, whether you read something firsthand, third, second, or fourth hand, you're not getting the whole truth. And when you're spreading your stupid narrative with nothing to back it up, you look like absolute morons, and you really just need to keep your mouth shut and worry about what does affect you, because you're probably lacking in that area in some respects. And if you put more focus on what actually affects you personally, whether it be your own job, your own family, your own situation, worry about that. Quit worrying about us, and everybody will be in a lot better place. I've said what I've had to say.
That's your 2 cents.
Yeah.
Wow, you had me going there for a second there. And when you go back to work, who knows what other narratives are being done now at work?
Right.
Because you don't go back for another couple weeks.
Correct.
So who knows what's going on now there, You're going to walk into all kinds of things.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what's happening now, like for the shift that went back this week.
Yeah.
I would have to imagine that there's going to be little tweaks and little changes and things of this nature. And by the time I get back, it's going to be a fraction of what the first week or, the first shift went through. But they're going to be changing along the way. So, I mean, they're going to be even more frustrated. We're coming into something, dude, the whole thing is just, it's mind-boggling. The amount of arrogance and ignorance when you deal with situations like this, because you've got so many people, so many opinions, some of them who think that they're experts when they have no shitting idea what's going on. And I'm telling you, the fastest way to irritate me is to run your mouth about my union brothers and sisters, about my job in particular, when you can plainly tell that they have not ever set foot in that kind of industry or environment.
That was great. I should have went and got my union shirt on and put it on during that speech. I would have been. I loved it. No, I'm serious. I loved every moment of it. You want to know my 2 cents?
Yeah.
My 2 cents is I'm getting tired of all these people, because I'm trying to find some weight equipment. I'm getting tired of all these people jacking up these prices on like Facebook Marketplace and anywhere you go to try to find things right now to try to work out in your basement. Oh no, they want to sell a set of 10-pound weights. Okay, so you got a 10-pound weight, you got a 10-pound weight, you got 20 pounds. You should be selling them for about roughly $20, $25. Oh no, people are selling those for like $50, $60, $70 right now. They're gouging us, and it's not fair.
So
it's not fair, I tell you, it's not fair.
Have you thought about making your own weights? Listen, I have an idea.
I have some stuff. We got some stuff. My nephew.
I know you do. I'm sure you do. Yeah. But I mean, if you need more, here's an idea.
It's downstairs.
It's over there.
It's right down there.
Hey, seriously, go to Home Depot, buy a couple of them Homer buckets and a bag of cement, mix it up, throw it in there. the bucket.
A bag of cement.
And if you really want to get creative with it, get a metal bar or something and put one in one bucket and the other in the other, and boom, barbell.
When you were ranting, I should have just went.
Yeah, no kidding. That cat is going to become the official mascot of the show, I think.
Yeah,
cool.
I'm telling you, this is what he does. In the mornings, we'll have breakfast. I'll get up. He pops right up here. He takes advantage of our seats, and when we're napping, he's on top of us, and he's a good kitty.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I dig cats, so
Yeah, I know you do.
All right, Jay. Anything else you got this week, brother?
I'm good.
All right, man.
I'm good.
Yeah, I think I don't think I have anything else other than if you dig what we're doing here and you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button and get notified each and every week a new episode drops. Yeah, just stay tuned to Facebook for all the latest updates and previews and upcoming events and upcoming shows, either here on YouTube or on my podcast on Spotify. If you just go to Spotify, look for the Clouse to the Heart podcast, and I would certainly appreciate your feedback. You can send us an email at clousetotheheart@gmail.com. He is Jason Cloyd. I am Jason Clouse. We thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves and each other. I messed that up too. I realize that. We'll have to do it next week.
We'll get it right.
He's Jason Cloyd.
He's Jason Clouse.
And you are watching the Clouse and Cloyd show. Thank you so much. We'll see you right here next week on YouTube.com.